social media, best practices, it's been around for a long time, the whole idea of social media, the fact that we can engage and share thoughts and ideas in the social media realm. This particular set of slides I'm going to use is from Social Media 404, a company that was around a few years ago trying to kind of straighten things out, and they made a proprietary system to kind of help people organize their thoughts and get things done in social media. So I'm using their slideshow presentation to explain a lot of the concepts, and I will apply my experiences and some of my thoughts as we go along. But this makes it so clean and so easy that you can take notes and walk away and apply it to your personal company, your personal goals, or into maybe a more a larger business structure and take it to your boss. I tweeted out last night, if anybody saw it, I tweeted out, here's a presentation I'm using tomorrow in class. I immediately got a response back from a buddy of mine who's totally graduated. He's going to be an EMT or something brainy like that. But he just graduated and he said, hey, my research group's project leader just asked me to head up our social media efforts. This is perfect. This is exactly what I'm going to show him that we're doing. So he was like, good timing. So it's still very much relevant today, even though this is from about 2.5 years ago. Best practices, there we go. Social media remains a mystery in many organizations, but it actually just takes some planning. And I think that's absolute truth. Once we plan it, we can kind of figure out what we're doing with it. A lot of people will get it. The tough thing about social media is that think about the guys that are running businesses with 30 or 40 employees. To them, it's a little frightening because they think people are on Facebook all day long or on Twitter all day long, and to them, it's kind of a game. It's kind of a silly oh, that's how you keep track of your college friends. Ooh. But they don't understand the power of social media, and they neglect it for a long time. And then when they do finally kind of get the whim, they're like, oh, maybe I should try some of this social media. They're afraid to put the money and the time into it, and they always ask, what's the ROI? What does ROI stand for?
Return on investment.
Return on investment, right? So they ask that. Big companies will always, and I think they're starting to get smarter, but especially back in 09, 08, that was the big question. What am I going to get out of this? If I hire a social media expert, or if I allow some of my people to spend their time doing this stuff, what is my company? How are we going to grow? What's that return on that investment? And there's a lot of discussion out there on what they're going to get back. But if you do it right with some good planning, the return can be great, dynamite, because there's a lot of parts to it. We'll actually get into it. So this slide deck walks us through a highly simplified program, an example, using the proprietary social media best practice framework, OASIS. That's something that Social Media 404 came up with, OASIS, and here's how it breaks down. Okay, first of all, how do we start the journey? It looks like a long ways away, doesn't it? Biggest mistake is picking tools before you know the job. Think about that. What are we talking about when we say tools in the social media realm? Let's name a couple.
Camera.
Okay, those are physical tools. Also, what else?
What networks are going?
Networks, right? Let's name a few. YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Keep going. WordPress, MySpace, go. What was it? SoundCloud. Have you guys heard of Flickr? Blogger, LinkedIn. Do you see all of these options? I actually have a picture in here of about 1 million of them. So the biggest mistake is picking the tools before you know what your job is. So we've got to go back a step further and figure out what our job is first. So our solution is to use a process. And this is an OASIS process that I'm going to walk you through. Again, apply this to your personal lives, apply this to what we're doing in this class, apply it to your business or take it to your boss. This is a great breakdown. Easy to remember framework applies to all these people, which is basically every one of you. Whether you're doing something for a profit group, for a non-profit group, for a government group, special causes, special events, it's all, there's a huge umbrella. It works. Here we go. OASIS stands for objectives, determining what you want to achieve first, your audience, profiling, right? We're talking about research here, figuring out who we're talking to, your strategy, find that path that fits, and implementation, selecting which technologies or which tools we're going to use, and then sustainment, or nurturing, measuring, adjusting, etc. I'll go through each of these individually, so don't worry about racing to write them down. Start with objectives. Here we go. First step is deciding, what do you want to achieve? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to increase revenue? Do you just want to gain more customers? Do you want to raise awareness of maybe a certain product that you have or a specific area that maybe hasn't been explored before? Do you want to develop new products? Do you want some feedback from people out there? So that's a pretty simple place to start. What is it you're trying to do? And then create a SMART objective, or two. Down here it says SMART objective. Make it specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timed. That's just kind of like business planning strategy to say, when you create an objective, don't just say, I want to have more followers. I want to have people be aware of my YouTube channel. Okay? This is not a SMART objective because it's not specific, it's not measurable, maybe attainable, but set yourself some goals. I want to have 100 subscribers by the end of the semester. I want to have 600 new likes on my Facebook page, in 3 weeks. Set some goals so that you know how to get there. Does that make sense? Make sure your social media objective contributes to at least one of your organizational objectives. Which, to me, that's like if your organization has a goal to stop and cure hunger in the world, then make sure your social media is in tune with that, right? Make sure that they jive with what your business is trying to do. Okay, here's an example. And this is one I think they run through the entire slide deck. The Ugly Car Company. There's their slogan. They're not pretty, but they're cheap and they work. Okay? So, taking that into account, that's their company. What are their corporate objectives? Increase sales by 50% this year, reduce operating expenses by 10%. So there's two big objectives as a corporation. So, the social media objective for the next 6 months, use free technology to create customer champions who will recommend our products to our new customers, right? So that's an example of making an objective for your company that fits in with your overall objective. If you're working for just yourself, like Ali Makes Stuff, if that's what you want to promote and grow, then think about this in terms of your personal objective. You don't have to have a corporate objective if it's just you, because that's just egotistical. Okay. I have the Drew Tyler Company and our corporate executive. Okay. Here we go. Ugly Car Company. Next one is audience. Okay, so OASIS. First one, O, objectives. Have yourself some goals. Second one is audience. We'll talk about the audience real quick. Internet is really pretty much populated by individuals. Each have their own capability, their own behaviors, their own desires. We need to know our audience and know how to connect with them. So again, we're talking about the Ugly Car Company. So let's take a look at who these people are we're trying to get a hold of. Here's the most critical step. Understanding your audience is crucial to success. We've talked about that in this class. Knowing who you're writing for, knowing who you're producing media content for, big deal. Determine from your available resources how you will segment your audience and discover their online characteristics. So it's kind of like setting yourself up to figure these things out. How do you break down your audience, who you hope to gather, and then find out who they are, where do they go, where do they spend their time, and that's some of these things that we'll talk about. So, part one. Ask yourself, are they customers? Who are we talking about? Customers, product reviewers, are they industry pundits? With our efforts in the social media, if we're trying to gain awareness for our company, do we want to go to news content creators or suppliers? Those are just some ideas for the Ugly Car Company. For you, it may be different. It may be that when you're talking about who are my customers, you say art collectors, or intellectual thinkers. Maybe my product, maybe what I'm building is I have a great idea for like politics, and I want to use my blog to share all my ideas on what we should be doing economically. Well, I have a totally different set of who my customers are for that idea. So part two, specifics. Where are they? Who are they? Male, female, both, age, and what capabilities or behaviors do they have? This is important, and I think this is something that you can look at with each individual set. Are they lurkers? You guys know what lurkers are, right? They're the ones that log into a network if they don't really engage or use anything. Like a Twitter lurker, maybe some of you. You have your Twitter account, you may once in a while get on there and see what's on your stream, but you never post anything yourself. You never engage in a conversation or a dialogue yourself. You just kind of watch things go by and be like, oh, that's kind of lurking. Or maybe somebody that goes to ksl.com for their news, reads all the news stories, and maybe even reads the comments to get some of those ideas from the commenters, but never leave the comment themselves. So it's kind of a lurking, right? Just kind of sitting there and loitering and taking in all the information without giving back, which is totally fine. But you want to know who those people are. If those are the people you're going after, you've got to do something different. Are they contributors? Are they creators? Are you looking for people who make stuff? Because if you're looking for people who make stuff or do things and put that out there, it's going to be a different set. Or the hunters-gatherers. Does that make sense? What would you consider a hunter-gatherer in the social sphere?
Researcher?
Yeah, or somebody that goes out and maybe finds a cool article and shares it, right? I'm going to go out and say, hey, I'm reading this blog that's maybe not so followed by many people, but I'm going to repost it to my Twitter or to my Facebook and share it with other people. So I didn't create that content, and I'm not just lurking, I'm kind of finding and putting it out in front of other people. Right? Aggregation. Also, do they use the mobile? Are they web only? What kind of sites do they visit and what do they look for? You've got to know this about your company, your idea, your thoughts. Now, what are they saying now? What are we hearing in our own world? What's the feedback to us through the resources we have? So think about the ugly car company. They want to think, okay, what are we hearing now with what ears we have? And maybe so far they have email or online comments, maybe some telephone calls, some paper comments. If they haven't really ventured forth into the social media realm, you've got to look for what are people asking for right now in this area, and then what are we hearing everywhere else from places we may not be yet. Bloggers, discussion forums, online news feeds, those kinds of things. So taking a pulse of your customers now. All right, put it all together. Use any recent existing research available. Recent is underlined probably because it's important that you're looking at recent data, not something from years ago, especially if you're trying to grow a company. You want to know where you are now, not where you were years ago. And then you want to conduct secondary audience research to verify and validate. Big words to basically say check yourself before you wreck yourself. All right. So you want to make sure that you can validate that. If you do some research and you find out that the people buying at the ugly car company are males and they're 36 years old and they lurk online and maybe they work from home, if you find that out from the people that are buying now, and that's recent data, you want to be able to validate that and check that audience and make sure that it's valid. Same with conducting primary audience research. If it's possible, get right out there to the people that are buying cars, give them a call. Hey, so you bought one of our cars. Can we ask you a few questions about how you found us and why you chose us? Right, that's the primary research. And then research all online conversations. Go out and find out where your brand name is being used and or people talking about you to make sure you can kind of be a part of that and know what they're saying about you. Here's an example. Okay, so this is their example. Their customers aged 18 to 30, live in the northern US and Canada. They use our product during harsh winter months. They're generally tech savvy and participatory online, high use of mobile devices, and they're likely to have a profile on one or more social networks. They're also high consumers of video, etc. So this is their primary audience. They figured this out through research and looking at people they've contacted and where the conversations are online. Now the secondary audience would be automobile reviewers, which would make sense, right? They want to sell their cars to people, they also want to get some press, and they want to find those people online, so they look at automobile reviewers. They're older, they're mostly North American, maybe some European, Asia Pacific. They mostly print content, but have a high degree of online replication, and they're more limited use in their online technologies. There's also a dealer network for selling things. Mostly lurkers, but they're out there, they're tech savvy. So that's their primary and secondary audience, because they're selling cars. There we go. Now you need a strategy. You've defined the audience, you've defined your own objectives. Now you've got to get a strategy to get that audience that you know is out there and is listening to you. You've got to set up that strategy to figure out, how do I get my stuff to them to get what I want out of that objective. Select a category or a tool out of this whole setup. So if you look at this crazy list, I recognize many of these, but we only use a handful. Look at this video tag here. So YouTube, MetaCafe, Vidler, Blip.tv, let's see, customer service, Yelp, Google, Yahoo, niche networks like Ning or LinkedIn. Niche networks is basically like specific networks for your niche. Like LinkedIn is business. Ning is specific because they have Ning like conglomerates from a whole set of bloggers that do the same thing would be in a Ning or a Plaxo setup. Social networks, friends, families. Then you have things specific to Twitter, TwitPics, TwitVid, a whole bunch I can't even see there. Then live streaming, going all the way around to the blog community, you can see up through there. Blog platforms, crowdsourced content, and go all the way around. So basically, you've got to select a category or tool and decide where you're going. Where are you going to find the people that are going to work for you the best path? Before you pick the tool, you want to pick the type of tool. Is it a blog? Is it a blogging platform? Is it a social network? Is it where people are going to put things anywhere? Like Flickr. Flickr is all about photographs. Something that you're doing, is it relative? Is it visual? Flickr may be a great place to have an archive full of photos that are searchable so that people on Flickr may stumble across them and be like, oh, this is beautiful, and then find out, oh, this person has all of these photographs of this type of art. So Flickr may be a good place for something visual. Pinterest, how many of you are on Pinterest? It's growing, it's getting big. My wife has almost got me there. But it's something that allows you to snip and grab things, and that's kind of the hunter-gatherer feel, right? So people on Pinterest can go and surf the web when they stumble across a great recipe. Oh, food, I'm so hungry. They stumble across a great recipe, they can clip it, put it on their board, and share it with their friends. And they know that people following that particular board of that person are interested in food, whereas Facebook, If you share it with your friends, you're going to share it with everybody who may not even live food, you may not even care about food. Does that make sense? So Pinterest gets you a little bit more specific. Okay, so there's your question. Should we be vlogging? Do we need to host a discussion forum where people can have a chat? Is that important? Do we need to be creating videos? Do we have a crowd? Is our audience the audience that wants to see things? Do they want videos? Okay, we need to know that. Do we need to join the social network, or we need to replicate content? I mean, these are questions to ask when you're considering what your path is for the tool. Here's an example of the ugly car. Primary audience, the guys that are buying cars are probably using social networks. They're probably sharing video content, and they may be on one of these product development sites or a customer service network. The secondary ones we talked about there were the dealers or the audio reviewers, the auto reviewers. They're looking at blog feeds and maybe specific documents, so we got to make sure that those are covered. That's part of that strategy. So let's go into implementation real quick. Again, I may be going really fast. You can go back and watch this online, or I'll give you the slide deck if you want to kind of go through it. Just link it on our canvas. So here's the implementation. How are you going to do it? We know who we're talking to, we know what we want to accomplish, and now we have some tools. We've chosen our tools. How are we going to implement that? Wow. Guys, we got to pick some specifics. We got to go where we know our people are going to be. So if you look at this is just supposed to overwhelm you, but they're all out there, and there's probably thousands more, that you have to decide which one of these makes sense for who I want. So that's where you got to come down to your own business and figure out what works for you. You've been dying to get your hands on the tools, and here's your chance. Find the type of tool that will most effectively connect you to your audience, and that's what you got to understand each of the tools. And maybe you sign up for accounts on some of the little networks that aren't so specific to what you do, to get to know some of the people that are there and find out what the audience is like. For instance, several of the outside and new littler networks, you can go on there and do a search. If, for instance, I'm selling like high quality art, I can do a search and find out how many profiles in that specific network are doing that or are interested in that. And in the big sites like Facebook and Twitter, you're going to find enough people to make it worth your while. But when you're looking at some of these other smaller ones, it may make sense to just jump on and do some searching and do that research and say, okay, I'm thinking about using X, Y, or Z. Are my people here? Right? Nice and simple. Okay. Find the one that'll most effectively connect with your audience, and it'll be a waste of time using any tool if your audience doesn't use it too. Does that make sense? And a lot of people don't get that. If your audience, the people you're going for, aren't also using that network, it is a waste of time. That would be like me having a video production company, but maintaining a network or maintaining a profile and a company face on blip.fm. It's all about radio, it's all about audio, it's all about songs. Video production isn't going to tie in at all with anything that happens on blip. And there's several others that just doesn't make sense. However, if I have a company access on Vimeo, which is much like YouTube but with a little bit more professional back end, that makes more sense because I know that I'm going to find filmmakers and people that are making things on Vimeo than I will on somewhere else. Okay, that's audience research for you. Moving on. So here we go. They're talking about, here's what we want to do. We want to gather and repackage and create required content and add social tools to our website. Content in, content out. So if they're the ugly car company and they want to make things, but they also want to kind of gather things that are important for people and share them, they want to draft social media press releases announcing the ugly car network because they're trying to increase their business. And they want to determine and allocate internal resources and obtain some external resources for getting some of that stuff done. So this is some of their implementation ideas. Outside of that, they want to create a presence in selected networks and create accounts with some of the selected tools and then begin that content distribution. The hunting, the gathering, the spreading. They want to be able to say, okay, I found a great article on why you should buy a used car, which would make sense for them. I'm going to share it with all of the people that have subscribed to us and put it in these areas that tie back to us. So they begin distributing that. Then, here comes the kicker, and this is where I think a lot of things probably fall short, especially when it's a smaller operation. If somebody's hired as a social media guru for a company, they can probably keep up on this because this is the main majority of their job is the sustaining. But on a smaller shop where it's just you, and maybe you're just really hoping to kind of launch things and get it out there, this is basically endure to the end. To use scriptural reference, right? The sustainment is the big part. I know, I always jump that far, don't I? This is the important part. This is where you walk it all the way home because you've got to keep doing this forever. For instance, I know some friends that work for JetBlue. JetBlue continues to sustain and engage people in their social networks. They have what they call their white ops team. Their whole job is to answer emails, answer tweets, follow up on tweets, and they're not just answering tweets that come to them, they're constantly monitoring the JetBlue brand. And if I had to do is if I got on with my Twitter account and I said something like, I had the worst experience on a JetBlue flight today, I can't believe that somebody stepped on my toe and spilled soda on my head, right? Their job as a white ops team is to see that kind of coming through because they're searching that term, JetBlue, and when they see that, and I know they would reach out and say, hey, we're sorry that happened, is there anything we can do? Right? That's monitoring that brand image. I don't think it ever happened. I'm too busy watching TV on JetBlue. I love JetBlue. Okay, but that is their team because they made an entire team for sustaining. Like that's their whole job, day in and day out. They've got a handful of people that just take a shift. And that's their job, is to engage and sustain. So let's talk about it. Boom. I don't know what this picture is, but you're supposed to keep the conversation going. Okay? And that's what we're going to talk about here. Nurture, measure, adjust. I love you guys. I love you. So you've launched the Ugly Car Network. Now what? This is the important thing. You're the host of an ongoing conversation. Treat everyone you talk to as an important guest. Everyone's entitled to respect. I mean, these seem like common sense, but you'd be surprised. Interact, gauge reaction, ask questions, give honest answers, listen, provide. So it's all about, once you've found those people in the social realm, it's about being personal. You are customer service, and you're not just out there as a promotion tool, because the big thing about social media that's different than what most companies have done in the past is the reciprocation. In the past, I could put out a press release, I could put something out over the air, or the radio, put out some commercials, and share my message out to the masses. And maybe a handful of them would find me through a phone call or an email and let me know what they think of me. Now with online, with social media, it is a two-way street. I put one tweet out, and I can get 20 tweets back that are negative or positive based on what I share. Right? So, big part of that is listening and providing feedback, connecting with somebody. Measure, measure, measure. This is a tougher one because a lot of people, they don't think about that part of it. But there's the analytics. There's the thinking about what it is that we're doing, and did we get the response back that we want? If I shared this video content and it's embedded on my site, did I get the views out of it that I want? And if not, what's the problem? Did I post it in the wrong time? Did I post it in the wrong place? Right? And these are all things that you can get from measuring. Results not what you want, do things differently. Results are good, do more of the same. That was pretty simple.
So would you say keeping in-house statistics is really important?
Absolutely.
Keeping it relative, because I mean, YouTube views means something to YouTube on YouTube, but it means something completely different as far as
yes.
Right?
Exactly. So keeping in-house statistics. For instance, I look at our Wake Up Wildcats show, and I looked at last week's show. They did a show Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so they missed Tuesday for technical reasons. And I counted up all the views on YouTube, and for me, you look at a YouTube show and it has 41 views, and on YouTube that's a flop, right? That's like, oh wow, yikes. But for us, in-house, I think, okay, that's 41 times that it was played, but I also know of other places it's been posted. On TVs in the Union Building, on live streams and other places where people may have caught it. And knowing that, and also knowing that it only has a shelf life of 1 day. What we're talking about is 1 day, and that's it. Then I know that 41 is not entirely shabby. I have a few shows that did 180, 200 views, and that's where I want to be. But then I take those statistics and I say, why did this one go 40? Why did this one do 180? What's the difference? A lot of it comes down to SEO. A lot of it comes down to probably the thumbnail picture. I'll tell you, the best show is the ones where I have both Kirsten and Crystal. They do a thumbnail with, and you can see the two of them up close. And those shows that do poorly, this is my unofficial research. The ones that do poorly are the ones where either it's a 3-shot or it's somebody else. Like Morgan was their thumbnail for one of their shows because he happened to be part of their MOS string, and it was just him talking, and it didn't get as many views as the one the days before and after where I had the two girls, in their locations. So yes, knowing that would make sense. How does it apply? And I think the same would be the same for like Facebook likes and other things. It's going to mean something specifically analytically to your in-house. Here's some examples of their Ugly Car Network, like looking at RSS subscribers. What's an RSS? Somebody knows this. I know they do. What is it? No? You're guessing. It's a rapidly speeding snake. No.
Really simple syndication?
Yes, that's it. Really simple syndication. Very nice. The point of RSS is that for instance, and a lot of people use these as readers. If I'm writing a blog, and I write all the time, and if somebody subscribes to that blog, they can get it as an RSS feed, a really simple syndication feed. Meaning they don't have to come to my blog, it goes to them and they get a headline and maybe a little blurb and they can decide if they want to read it. So RSS subscribers are the ones that want your content. Anytime you publish something, they want it in their list. So if their subscribers are up 45%, then that's good news, and these guys are saying we want to increase our article output. Things that we're writing and content we're sharing, we want to increase it. Does that make sense? Professionally produced videos not being viewed as many times as anticipated? Okay. Well, then we need a new strategy. We need to ask customers to submit videos of themselves using the product and maybe establish a few new publication channels. So they're taking results and they're applying, okay, here's things aren't that good, let's change them. Or things are great, let's improve them or keep doing the same. Product enhancement suggestions from customers keep increasing. So start bringing engineering directly into the conversation somehow. If we start getting a lot of feedback from people about how our ugly cars can do better, let's bring somebody in that can do something about it. Right? Make it more efficient. High number of dealership inquiries from new international markets. Great. Engage a vice president of business development and move from there. So that's kind of the analysis moving forward. And on a smaller scale, you would be doing more of personal things. Okay, my YouTube views aren't up as much as I'd like. What do I need to do? Or my Facebook likes aren't growing anymore. What have I stopped doing, or what I need to do to make sure that this gets shared or engaged? And so on, so on, and so on. So here's our conclusion. Key principles to remember. I think you've probably got these in your notes. Number one, this is for the engagement. This is for the sustaining. Listen. Make sure you're listening to the conversations that are going on out there. And here's a very, not entirely confusing, but if you look at, here's my presence, the you and I, and here's everyone else that's writing about maybe the same content, the same ideas, and then the aggregation of content and the interpretation and the adjustment of all of that. Where do we land? How's that looking? So that's the listening dimensions. What are we hearing from ourselves? What are we hearing from others? And what's going on outside of us? Also, people trust people, not institutions. This gets pretty deep into all the different places and who trusts who where. But here's some sites like the Trust Barometer. I trust a person like me is kind of the takeaway from this slide. But actually, I know somebody who works at Edelman. How funny. Loose lips launch ships. So basically what they're saying is you've got to find out who is listening to you. If you look at that top one, in Brazil, Canada, Germany, Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, US, a person like me is considered the most credible source of information about a company. Is that true? You listen to your peers, right? If somebody says, hey, I went to this great shop and they fixed my car and it works wonderfully, I recommend them. You listen to that probably before you listen to an advertisement. However, if you look in other places, France, India, Ireland, etc., a financial or industry expert comes in first as a credible spokesperson. They would rather hear an ad where somebody says, I fix cars for a living and these guys do it right. Right? So that's the difference. Well, you look at your audience. You can find some of the research that's been done to find out who you should be presenting to your audience. For the most part, I think anything that we're doing, people want to hear from people like them. So that's who you want to have sharing your stuff. Okay, bite size. All content must now be created and packaged in small pieces for easing, mixing, sharing, and consuming. And that's kind of what we're doing in this class, right? We're talking about those essentials of the digital media world. How do we create those bite-sized pieces to get them out there? And by bite-size, we're talking about lengths of videos that are not super long or not super short. We're talking about that perfect little nugget that is just right. How many of you get to a video on Facebook or on YouTube, and if it's just something you're kind of glancing by, you look down at the time, and if it's over, 3, 4, 5 minutes, you kind of pass it by? I see anything over 3 or 4, and I'm like, sorry, I don't have time for that. But if I see a video that I see is like 2.5 minutes, okay, I can waste that much time. Whether it's for pleasure or for totally engaging. If I'm out to learn something, and I know that I'm out to really engage and say, oh, you know what, I really need to understand how this operation works, I'm okay finding a 10 or 15 minute. But for the most part, what we're doing here, creating bite-sized pieces, we're looking for those people who are just kind of running around the internet aimless, and we want to catch them, so we keep them short. One of our assignments coming up is a 60-second spot period. I won't let you go any more than 60 seconds, and for that very reason. Keep it condensed. And part of that is also easy sharing. I rarely put anything on my site to say, you should watch this if it's over 3 minutes. Even when I get stuff from this class, last semester I had the final projects I had, between the 2 classes of this class, I had probably 35, 40 final projects. I'd say probably 30 of them were really good enough to be like, hey, wow, impressive. And I think I put 4 on my Facebook as, hey, you should watch this. because they were short. And I added to it. This isn't gonna take much time, but take a look at this. Here's what some of my students are producing. Makes me really proud. I'm turning up inside. All right? There's some really good ones. I'll show you some of those. But it's all about easy sharing. All right, dip your toes. Here's the organizations that make the leap. If you're talking about making a small business and getting bigger, getting it out there, you've probably seen this breakdown of like the type of people out there. They're innovators. People are doing new things, trying new things, pushing the envelope. They're a small segment of the population. The early adopters are starting to grow, but they're the ones that would like jump onto something before it got big, right? Pinterest before everybody heard about it. And then you have the early majority that come in, the late majority, and then the laggards. These are people that are getting on Facebook now. These are the ones, the laggards are kind of like, oh, I should probably be there if I need to grow my company. So they're late. The ones that are early adopters are going to be ones that are maybe jumping into things that you haven't even heard of. Social media, Pinterest is probably coming into this area. But as a company, think about your own company or other companies you may work for. Where are they? Are you attaching yourself to early adopters and hoping people grab it so that you grow and everybody hears about you? Or are you trying to get through this big chasm, trying to jump that so that everybody can find out about you? Chances are, if you're doing your own thing, you're hoping to grab these people and these people so that it can become the bigger ones. But you've got to cross that chasm, and to do that, you've got to try. Try hard. All right, if you need help, ask for it. Here's the process to remember. OASIS. Listen. People trust people. Keep it bite-sized. Start it small, and ask for help. Chances are you're not the first person forging through the social media world. If you're launching your own personal business or your own ideas, there are others out there that have done it. For instance, you can get on Twitter and say, I really think that I need to be on Twitter for what it is that I'm producing, but I don't know how to gain my, where do I find my followers? Start asking for help, and people will usually tell you, to find followers on Twitter, you need to follow other people that like what you want. For instance, let's say I'm starting to sell these really cool leather books that look like Doctor Who's, what is it called, the TARDIS, right? I have a friend that makes books. He makes beautiful books, and I'll show you pictures someday. But he made one with the front, it's all blue, it's blue lambskin, and it's got the TARDIS like phone book look, phone box look. If that's who I want to like sell that to people, and I want to start a company selling the Doctor Who diary, I need to get on Twitter and do searches for people who love Doctor Who and start following all the Doctor Who fans. And as I follow them, chances are they'll follow me back, and that will grow my basis. The people I can say, hey, we've got a new version of the book out, or did you see this episode? Did you notice the book in this shot? And put up a little picture of somebody, because they actually have River's song, somebody. I don't even know the book show, but somebody has a diary that looks like this. It's kind of a cute little blue book. That's what I'm talking about. Ask for help. Find out how to get that stuff done. All right, this is them saying that although they're probably now defunct, they're asking, what can we do for you? Talk with us, Social Media 404. They have some of their stuff still online, but I have not seen tweets from them. They have like one tweet a year since 2009. I would say ask for help from people that are doing what you want to be doing. Okay, that, I believe, is what we got.